Cool. Thanks, Marlon. So good evening, everybody. How are you all doing? Great to see you all on. Some new names, as Marlon said. Just for me, if you're new on the call, please just put up your hand. If you haven't been on this webinar before, just raise your hand or type in new, and that'll be great. I'll know who's on. So, Karoon, you're new this year, but you're not new in our world. You've been in our world for a long time. So wonderful to see you back on this year. Good job. And the rest of you are regulars. So welcome. So tonight's the topic is exchange, and why is exchange so important in business? So I want to kick off with asking you a question, and I'm going to ask you to type your answer into the chat box, and then I'll work from there. So tell me, what is a business? Briefly describe to me in sort of 10 or 12 words, what is a business? Let's have a look. Who's come on? Let's see who's typing in here. What? How would you describe a business? What is a business? I'd like to open their mic and tell me. Okay, good. So Debbie says a platform to create value in exchange for others. Very good. Kasim, FMCG sales agent. Okay, so business, you could be a sales agent. Okay, good. What else? Roy says the process of selling a product or service to make a profit. Good. Gillis says a business is a tool used to generate income. Very good. Anyone else? Okay, so I'm just gonna share with you, when I look at a business, this is how I look at a business, and I believe is the core basis of a business. So a business is the I'm having a great time with technology today. How many of you, like me, you have these days where technology just works like an absolute bomb, and then you have other days where technology doesn't work like an absolute bomb? So, I had one of those days. I was in a meeting and working on my laptop, and the guy that I was having the meeting with, he decided to knock my full glass of water all over my laptop. That was a lot of fun, and now I am in the process of working half on my phone, but anyway, let's get done. So for me, a business is the provision of products, services, time, or knowledge or skill for money. Okay, so I'll say that again. So it's the provision of product or services, time, skill, or knowledge for money. So by a show of hands, how many of you would fall into that category? By a show of hands, how many? Okay, good. So 2 of you, 3 of you, 4 of you, 5. Okay, so pretty much that is an apt description for what a business is. Now, there's a key component to this. Is for a lot of people, that's where they get stuck. Is they provide a good and service, and they focus on making money. Now there's a key piece that goes into that, and it's this. It's the word exchange. So the word exchange. So it is the provision of a product, a service, time, knowledge, or skill in exchange for money. So in terms of that, exchange is a very, very important part. So let's kick off with, what does exchange mean? What is the principle of exchange? So I'm going to read to you through one of our mentors, a guy called Alan Walters. A lot of work that my wife does around mindset and helping people get themselves out of their own way through mindset. And it comes from the description from a guy called Alan Walters. So what Alan says is, exchange is to give and receive in a reciprocal manner, interchange, exchange of ideas, to relinquish one thing for another, to give over, to replace something unsatisfactory with something else, exchange defective merchandise, for example, to provide or transfer in return for something of equal value. Now, that is a very important part of exchange. To provide or transfer in return for something of equal value. The term in exchange is in itself an actual subject, for in it lies much of man's ability to get along with others. All interpersonal relationships and all national and international relationships are monitored by what is being exchanged. So I'll go back to the description of a business. A business is the provision of a product, a service, a skill, time, or knowledge in exchange for money. So there's a key component to being an exchange. There's a key component to building a long-lasting business. Many people create exchange. They have a product, they give it, they receive for money. Now, the question I'm going to ask you, when you're doing business, when you're conducting a relationship, when you're working with other people, when you're giving something and getting something in return, are you in exchange or are you out of exchange? So anyone want to contribute? When I say, are you in exchange, what do I mean? When I say you're out of exchange, what do I mean? Who would like to type in a couple of responses to that? So when I say, or even open up your mic, when you're in exchange, what does that mean? Just put up your hand and Marlon will open up your mic and then you can speak. So what would being in exchange mean? In exchange. Okay, good. So Debbie says in exchange is giving and receiving. So Deb, any form of exchange is the form of giving and receiving. But you can either give and receive and be in exchange, or you can give and receive and be out of exchange. So Karun says out of exchange is not an equal partnership. Okay, good. So out of exchange, there is something that is not equal. In exchange it is equal. So when you want to build a good relationship, when you want to build long-term business, you've got to be in exchange. And what type of exchange? You have to be in fair and equitable exchange. So Roy says out means that the transaction is incomplete. Karun, satisfaction on both sides. Very good. So when you're in exchange, both parties feel they were treated fair and equitably, and they got fair and equitable return in what you did. If you're out of exchange, what people feel is they didn't get fair and equitable return. So the question I'm going to ask you in your day-to-day dealings, how many of you can recall some examples where you've been out of exchange? Maybe you've been on the receiving end of being out of exchange. Maybe you have. Maybe you've been the person that has put someone out of exchange. Anyone like to share an example where you know that you have been out of exchange? Unmute yourself if you want, and then we can talk it through. Debbie, did you unmute yourself?
Debbie,
I did, Barry. Oh, I think Melvin did. Melvin?
Cool. Debs?
Yes.
Do you want to Yeah, do you want to chat about exchange?
Right. So, hi, Barry. Good evening. Barry, this is very apt as to what I've been experiencing of today. So, it's very helpful what you've just said about in and out of exchange. So, out of exchange is completely where I've been in that in my business, because of, and here I go, because of the money situation in Zimbabwe. My exchange has been that I am giving so much to the receiver, but receiving very little in terms of monetary value. So
Okay.
what I've had to take control of that, because I'm completely out of exchange.
Yeah.
It's definitely not equal, Barry. So this is very helpful, and I understand what you're saying. Both parties are definitely not being treated equally. You're getting a lot more value than what I'm getting in return. So I've had to take control of the situation.
Okay, good. So when you say the receiver, would that be the government? Would that be your clients?
Yes, the clients.
So that would be your clients. Okay. So
Yes.
yeah. So how many of you understand what Debbie's talking about? Is you provide a lot, and you provide a lot and a lot and a lot, and your clients don't. They either don't pay, or they don't honor their part of the agreement, and they get out of exchange. What happens to that relationship? So I'm going to hazard a guess, Debs, that relationship is now starting to fall apart.
Well, Barry, I've got to a point where, again, I asked them the questions, and I said, give me your feedback before I made a decision to say this is where I'm going. Because of the devaluation of our money. So I'm giving them the opportunity to stay in and stay on board with me, or to jump off. And then from here onwards, I'm going to just say, right, in order to get the fair exchange, this is where we're going to start.
Okay, good. So you made a decision to get the relationship back in exchange, yes?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So over a period of time, if any relationship goes out of exchange, it either you have to make a decision to get it back in exchange, or that relationship will fall apart.
Yes, 100%. Okay. That's, yeah.
Very good. Very
Thanks,
good.
man.
So great example. Anyone else like to give an example where you have either been in exchange or you've got somebody out of exchange? So Karen says out of exchange is usually what employees feel in general once one can never be paid enough. So, well, that's really an interesting topic, Karen. So the question I always ask when it comes to exchange with employees is, if you're an employee, are you delivering on your terms of agreement? And a lot of times what I hear is, yes, but I would if I got paid more. So the question I ask right up front is, I understand you want to be paid more, but what I'm going to ask you is, in order to put yourself in exchange first, are you delivering on your terms of agreement? Because putting ourselves in exchange comes from us first. So a lot of times what I see, especially in an employee-employer relationship, is that people expect somebody else to make the move first so that they can follow suit. I've just learned this, that whenever there's a position out of exchange, I have to look at where I'm out of exchange first and do whatever I can to address that. So what happens in an employee-employer relationship is that when that employee feels they're not being paid enough, many times you go and ask the employee goes, well, they're not doing what they agreed to do. Now you have this imbalance. Now you have this absolute situation of where both parties are totally out of exchange, and either that relationship is going to fall apart, or somebody has to address it. So a great example around an employer-employee or employee-employer relationship, and we see it all the time in South Africa, where people are demanding that they get paid more, but when you actually go and check, are they delivering on what they agreed to get paid in the beginning? Very often, how many of you realize that our service standards in South Africa, for example, are getting worse and worse because people are not delivering on what they agreed? So now we create this imbalance, and what it creates emotions, it creates anger, it creates everything else that goes with it, until something happens that gets the whole situation back in exchange. So Gilly says, driving up and down to a client with little or no result. Felt like the client was using me for information. Yeah, how many of you have ever experienced that? Where you do a ton of work for a client, you have an expectation, and then what happens is they go and use the information that you gave them, and they go and close a deal with somebody else using all that information, and what you feel is you feel totally out of exchange. Okay, so there's a number of areas there. One is if we're not clear on what the expectation is up front, and we don't set the rules of the game up front, often what we do is we create an environment where we are where we create an environment where we actually go out of exchange, which means that that now we feel, like you say, Gilly, now you feel outdone. The question I would ask is, did you set up the rules of the game? Did you set up the rules of engagement? Did you set up the expectations right up front? Or was it an expectation that you had, but not an expectation that the client had? So now what happens is that there's a mismatch in our expectation, which means it's a great recipe for getting out of exchange. Does that make sense? So I'll give you an example in my world, for example. So we run these free webinars. You can get on this webinar anytime you want. So what I see sometimes is I see and there's no one on this webinar this evening, by the way, that falls into that category. But what I see, for example, is I give an example. I had one person who for a number of years came to all my free events. Every time I had a free event, that person was in the room. Every time I had a free webinar, that person was in the room. Every time I spoke in an event, that person was next to me asking me questions. But do you know that person never, ever, ever came to one of my paid events? So over a period of time, what I felt was that person was now out of exchange with me. Is my agreement was you can come on a free event, but what I felt over a period of time that person was taking every single opportunity to learn from me and pull whatever they could, but they weren't prepared to get back in exchange by taking a step to get in one of my programs or moving to a higher level. Does that make sense? Now, how I deal with that, or how they deal with that, recreates that level of exchange. How many of you have been in a similar situation before? So exchange is a critical component to business. What I'm going to encourage you to do is think about the relationships that you have, about the clients that you work with, about the suppliers who supply you, and just ask yourself this question: am I in exchange or am I out of exchange? If I'm out of exchange, where am I out of exchange, and what do I need to do to address exchange? So the principle of exchange, also known as the principle of reciprocity. So reciprocal means concerning each of two or more persons or things, interchanged, given, or owed to each other. Reciprocal agreements. Performed, experienced, or felt by both sides. Reciprocal respect. So reciprocal value. So in the principle of exchange is the principle of reciprocity. Am I giving you value, and am I getting value in return? And if we both feel that we're getting fair and equitable exchange or fair and equitable value, we will keep going on. What happens is people get out of exchange. So this principle of exchange, this is not a theory. This is not something that Barry thought up yesterday afternoon. This is what Buckminster Fuller calls a universal principle. And essentially what a universal principle or a generalized principle is true in all cases. So the principle of exchange is true in all cases. So wherever there is a system of reciprocity between two or more people or two or more entities or individuals, organizations, the principle of reciprocity comes into place, and so does the principle of exchange. So it happens pretty much in all cases. So it is It is a principle of life. It's a principle of existence. It is a principle of the universe. Whatever your beliefs are, it's a principle of God. It's one of God's principles of exchange. So I've just learned this, that when people get out of exchange, God, the universe, whatever you believe in, will get them back into exchange over a period of time. So if you just look at what's happening in South Africa right now, I believe we're going through a period of exchange, where people who have created, if you want, people have ripped off the country. People have created situations where they've allowed corruption to rule. What's happened is that the playing field is starting to get back into exchange. So where something is out of exchange over a period of time, God, the universe, the system, whatever you believe in, will write it and create and put it back into exchange. It's a law of nature. So what happens is when nature starts getting out of exchange, something happens, and it writes it and gets it back into a level playing field. And this is so true to business. Are you in exchange in your dealings? You know, in our brand promise, one of our core promises in our brand promise is that we will stay in exchange in all dealings. So our brand promise is we'll deliver way more than we promise, way more value than we promise, and we will stay in exchange in all dealings. And I believe, and I've observed and I've experienced over time, is that if you endeavor to keep all relationships in exchange, if you endeavor to keep all business relationships, all transactions in exchange, your business will add value and be around for a long time. Look, making money in business is very easy. It's not hard to make a lot of money. And it's not hard to make a lot of money if you're prepared to do it and get out of exchange. I mean, you can just go and provide a whole lot of faulty products to people for absolutely nothing, get them to pay you and get out of the game. You're gone. They're going to have faulty products. You're going to have a whole lot of cash, but you're going to be out of exchange. And what I will guarantee you is that at some stage, you've heard the saying, there's a big wheel in the sky. At that some stage, you will be righted. Something will happen in order to right your level of out of exchange. So you see it in politics, you see it in governments, you see it in business, you see it in people that are unethical. At some stage, that exchange is righted, and there's a balance that is created. So, any questions on this? Are you guys getting value out of this? If you're getting value, just type in yes. And if you have any questions, either put your hand up, Marlon will open your mic, or just type in your question or your comment. So while I'm waiting for questions or comments to come up, I said it just now, but one of the things I'm going to encourage you to do is I'm going to encourage you to go away from this call and sit down and say, ask yourself, where am I in exchange? Okay, good. What am I doing that's keeping me in exchange? Where am I out of exchange? Now, it's not only in business. I mean, it could be, honestly, for some of you, it could be in your marriage. For some of you, it could be in your relationship with your children. It could be in your relationship with your business partners. So there's many areas. Where are you in exchange and where are you out of exchange? You know, in my marriage with Nicole, I'm often asking myself, am I in exchange or out of exchange? And it's a discussion that we have on a fairly regular basis. Is, you know, if she feels as though she's giving way too much and I'm not giving enough in return, she'll get out of exchange, and go from there. Yeah, Debs, you want to ask some questions?
Thanks, Barry. Barry, just firstly, this is absolutely amazing. Your timing is incredible. And what do you do when you get to a point where you feel as though, for want of a word, and I'm sure everyone else might feel it, is if you change the word exchange to being used, or you felt like that person that kept coming to your free events, which I can completely relate to, what do you do in a situation where you're constantly giving, but there's nothing coming back? How do you deal with those people?
Okay, so that's a great question. So again, it also depends on why you went. So when I do a free event, I do a free event for a specific reason so that I can add value to people.
Yes.
Okay. Now, my whole goal of free event is I'm looking for the right people who are looking for me. Now,
Yes.
does it irritate me that people come in and just keep coming in? Yes, it does. Do I do anything about it? No. What I've learned to do is I've learned to just accept that those people are there. And my belief is that over a period of time, if I treat them well and if I keep adding value, well, they may or may not come to an event. But I've also learned that that's not the person that I'm looking for. So it actually doesn't really matter whether they come in and sit in the room or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what I do is I don't give it any of my energy. I don't give it any of my attention. So I don't allow that. I don't allow the perception of being out of exchange to affect my energy. So what happens is people now get offended or they get irritated or they get angry. And then what happens is all our effort and energy goes towards that person or those people rather than on the people that are in our environment for the reason to be in that environment. Does that make sense?
Yes, understood. Yeah. Brilliant.
So just, it's like anything. Don't allow your energy to go there because it's a small piece. The other thing is if you see that a lot of people keep coming and you're not creating the result that you intend, then what you got to start doing is you got to start looking at what is your, when it comes down to sales. So if you're running a free event after free event after free event and no one's signing up for your program, but the same people keep coming back, what it tells me is they're getting value, but you're not closing properly, or you're not creating the right offer, or you're not giving them. So sometimes, in Little Voice Mastery, Blair has a tool that says as is it. And sometimes I would as is it. So if I have the same 15, 20 people that keep coming back, but they never take the step further, at some stage I might as is it in the room. I might say, hey guys, we've done 4 free events in the last 4 weeks. You guys keep coming back, but for some reason you don't take the step to do my program, do my sales program, or do my coaching program. Can I ask why?
Yeah.
Now, and what may happen is they may, Davis, honestly, we love what you're teaching, but we're not interested in the program for this, and this reason. Oh, well, that's interesting. Well, what would you be interested in? Oh, well, what we would be interested in is this. Excellent. So if I created that, yes. So sometimes we just may get it wrong.
Very good, Barry. Yeah, makes sense.
So it's not only when it comes to doing an event in a room. This is with customers. You keep going back to a customer, and they keep, maybe you feel as though they're stringing you on, and then that you don't close the deal. If that consistently happens, you got to go sit down with them and say, look, I need to ask you a question. In my opinion, from how I feel, I think I did this, and this, but I don't get the deal. Why not? Is there something I'm not doing? Is there something? And you allow them to be able to put you in the perspective, and then at least you're in that position to understand why you may have dropped the ball, or why you're not actually delivering based on what they want, but you thought that's what they wanted. Does that make sense?
Perfectly. Thank you. Awesome. Thanks, Barry.
Great question. Thank you, Deb. So Elena says, hi, what if you could not have the value requested due to the circumstances, an inconsiderate request? How do you rectify it if the other person doesn't understand or blames you? Well, so Helena, value is a perceived thing. So if I'm looking for, let's say I'm looking for, I don't know, t-shirts, and I need them by Friday, and I order them, and you tell me, yes, I can get them by Friday, and you can't get them by Friday. I don't care why you can't get them. What I do understand is that you didn't honor my agreement. Now I might feel out of exchange. Now, if you say to me, well, you don't understand, my guys went on strike and this happened, that might be true, but the reality is I didn't get what I wanted, didn't get what I paid for. So I might feel out of exchange. Now, you might not feel that I'm right. Well, that's to a degree irrelevant because I'm the one that feels out of exchange. Does that make sense? Now, part of the game is being able to balance that and being able to create clarity. That's part of the game of sales. It's part of the game of communication. A lot of times people get out of exchange because we're not clear in our communication. We're not clear in our expectation. You know, I had a really great session with one of my mentors today, and we were talking about creating and setting up and managing expectation. And one of the reasons, and especially with business partners and employees and that type of thing, one of the reasons we get out of exchange is we don't manage expectations. So I was just saying to him, I'm particularly, I love leading, I love creating stuff, I love being an entrepreneur, but I'm a really crappy manager. So, you know, when I was in the corporate world, you know, I was sales director and I headed up the strategy, the vision. I was out in the market driving sales, working with sales teams. But the one thing I hated and I was not great at doing was managing people in their day-to-day stuff. And one of the reasons is that I didn't set up the clear expectations. Over years, I've become better at it, still a lot to learn. But what happens is when we don't have a clear expectation, we don't have a place to be able to measure whether we're creating value, creating exchange, creating reciprocity or not. Does that make sense, Helena? If you want, open up your mic and we can chat about this. If that answers that, that's cool.
Helena, your mic's open.
Helena, do you want to expand on that a little bit, or does that answer the question? Okay, so let's go to DeLeon. So DeLeon says, how do you handle when someone doesn't want to communicate to make suggestions of how to get back into exchange? Well, my question, DeLeon, is how do you think you handle it?
Thanks, Barry. So I think that the only thing I can think of is that to observe what they need and to be and become very present in that sense.
Okay.
That's the only answer I have.
So you've got out of exchange and they
Yes.
do not want to communicate to allow you to get back in exchange.
Yes.
Well, that's the art of sales. That's the art of communication. That's the art of relationships. And that's one of the biggest failures of most people is they do not know how to communicate in the right way in order to get people to be able to create dialogue to get back into exchange. And one of the reasons is that often they go into the situation. Not wanting to be blamed. So they don't go into the situation going, okay, the first step is I need to find out what part I played in this, apologize and move forward. So what happens is people get defensive. Well, that's not how it worked, and no, it's not my fault. Well, then you start playing the blame game, and you don't take responsibility for wherever it is that you are, and you won't get in that. So to be able to sit down with people and get back in exchange is part of it is art of communication. The better you communicate, the better you connect with people, the better you can do it. I mean, I drop the ball. I drop the ball often, but the reality is that I'm very quick to get back in, to apologize, to pick up the ball, and to deliver on the next piece, or deliver as quick as possible to get back in exchange as fast as possible. If that makes sense to Lynn.
Yes, thank you. It does, Barry. I think then to do it quickly and to have a quick discussion rather than wait.
Frankly, sometimes you break exchange to such a degree people just don't want to see you. Well, then my advice, well, I'm not going to give you advice for how I handle that, is I go, okay, well, maybe I move off for a while and drive my attention somewhere else. I'll apologize with authenticity and sincerity, and then move on. Because very often there's in that case, well, they have to come around when they come around. So you move on and you learn the lessons, and you realize why you got out of exchange, why they're so pissed off with you, why they don't see value in you anymore, and you try not to repeat the same problem with another client. You take the learning, you celebrate the win, and you get excited. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate the perspective.
Cool. Thank you, Delia. Anyone else? Any other questions or comments around this piece on exchange? And it's in all areas of life. All areas of life. Look at if you're a business owner and you're employing people, are you in exchange with them? And one of the biggest areas of being out of exchange, it's with yourself. It's with yourself. So you make promises to yourself, and then you don't deliver on your promises. You break trust with yourself. You get out of exchange. When you get out of the exchange, you beat yourself up, and it's that cycle. How many of you know what I'm talking about? You know that you want to do something. You promise you're going to do it. You don't do it. Boom, you're out of exchange, and that cycle goes. So one of the biggest areas where I believe that we need to start looking at is are you in exchange with yourself? It's give and take. I watch people work so damn, they work hard. They never have time for health, never have time for eating properly, get really overweight. They might be making lots of money, but they're totally out of exchange in the area of health, or they're totally out of exchange in the area of their relationship with their wife and their kids. All that. So you got to balance. You got to balance those whole areas of your life, and you got to balance that area with yourself. You spend lots of time working really hard, make lots of money, but your health takes a hiding. You're out of exchange with yourself in your area of health. Or you go the other way. You spend all your time being healthy. You really look healthy, but you don't get out, and you don't create wealth, or you don't build relationships. You'll be out of exchange in those areas of your life with yourself. Does that make sense? So another suggestion that I'm going to make is sit down and look at yourself and say, what areas in my life am I out of exchange? I am often sitting down with myself and say, where am I out of exchange with myself? Health and wellness has for my 49 years on this earth has been one area that I have constantly fought to be in exchange. And what happens is when I get out of exchange in one area, boom, my health and wellness takes a pounding. So I've had to be very deliberate in staying in exchange with myself and creating the right level of exchange when it comes to health and wellness. And that has a dramatic effect on all other areas of my life. Is it easy? No, it's damn friggin' hard. But yeah, you've got to be aware. So one of the biggest areas of growth is being aware in all your relationships, in your relationship within yourself, in your relationships with other people, in your relationships business to business, person to person, whatever those relationships are, delivery to customers. You've got to have a high level of awareness and a high level of presence in terms of understanding that whether you're in exchange or out of exchange. Are you delivering fair and equitable exchange or not? And know when to call it, and know when to call it on somebody else and get it back in exchange, and know when to call it on yourself so that you can get yourself back in exchange with them, and be open and honest. Because I don't know about you, I'm in this game of business for the long term, and it's when I look here and I look at for example what I do and my purpose is I teach entrepreneurs to be successful so that they can make a difference. Now, if I want to teach entrepreneurs to be successful, to make a difference, I want to be around for a while to be able to do it, because I want to help many people make a difference. And in order to be able to do that, I have to maintain a high level of exchange in all my dealings. Does that make sense? So you've got to be asking yourself, are you in exchange or are you out of exchange? What areas are you in exchange for? And I just believe one of our biggest problems in the world today, one of our biggest problems in South Africa and Africa, is too many people are so far out of exchange. Politicians, flipping heck, their biggest problem is they're out of exchange. They take and do not deliver. When you just look throughout our whole continent, if politicians would actually just honor the agreement they had and just deliver on what they promised, they would get back in exchange. We would. How many of you realize we would be so much happier in terms of their delivery? Now, I'm not going to allow a politician to determine whether I get up in the morning happy or not. When I mean happier in terms of the level of exchange, I'm paying tax. I'm getting something back in return. I'm paying tax, and I can see that there's less and less people living in squatter camps because we're building houses and we're creating all that sort of stuff. I know that we're getting exchange, but how many of you realize in this world, politicians are so far out of exchange? What about businesses? How many of you have dealt with businesses? How many of you watch businesses where there's such a gap and people are so far out of exchange? I had a classic example in one company that I consulted in. We were in the middle of doing retrenchments, wage negotiations, all that sort of stuff. The company was really, really battling, and I was doing some consulting work in there. The next thing, senior management had just paid themselves a big fat bonus check based on accruals. Now, in my world, boom, that was straight out of that was out of exchange. But they said to me, yes, well, we accrued it, and it was for that. I said, well, it's not right, because on one hand you're retrenching and fighting for a 4% wage increase. On the other hand, you're paying yourself a couple of $100,000 in bonuses. There's something out of exchange, and what happens is people feel that, they see that, and that creates ripples within that organization, which will do many things, and often shut it down, topple it, drop it, because people are out of exchange. And you'll be amazed at what it takes to actually get people back in exchange. It's not as big as many people anticipate. It's just, and I honestly believe that the average human being actually just wants to feel that they're in exchange. They want to feel that what they're giving, they're getting something fair and equitable in return. What happens is when you're working in an environment where you know that person is out of exchange with you, well, it forces people to try go the other way, so that they have to be more out of exchange to balance that more out of exchange, and it just doesn't work. How many of you understand what I'm talking about? So the lesson tonight is, in all your dealings, can you be in exchange? Can you be in exchange? Okay, not you can't control what the other parties do, but can you be in exchange? And I guarantee you, when you are in exchange, when you focus on being in exchange, when you focus on upholding your part of the deal and delivering on the value that you promise, you will start seeing so many more people come into exchange with you, and your results will dramatically shift. Any questions or comments before we finish off? Did you guys get value out of tonight? Excellent. Thank you, Karun.
Barry?
Debs, yes.
Sorry to come in again.
No problem. Thank you for participating.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate how helpful this has been, because I've been in a situation where I've become so despondent and I've become so frustrated, and I realized it's because I was allowing this to happen. And how do I get into a situation where I feel there is fair exchange? Where you feel you're just giving and giving and giving, and it is value, and you can see the change occurring, but you just feel you're not getting the equivalent back. So I was getting to a point where I was becoming very frustrated, not resentful is too harsh a word, but to the point where I was thinking, why should I be doing this? But it was about this thing of fair exchange. And it's so helpful to understand that it wasn't just a me situation, and you've hit the nail on the head on everything. And I'm sure a lot of people experience this whole thing in their lives, but thank you for that. And also when you refer to marriage and all these things, it is in any form of a relationship, no matter that be business or family. So thank you so much for this. This was extraordinary help. Thank you.
Awesome, Debs. Pleasure. You know what the real reason is, Debs? You haven't been on one of my programs for a long time.
Don't tell me. Yeah, we'll get to this point. I'm this very close, Barry. Thank you.
So Debs, you make such a great point, but the reality is what was the word you used? So you're frustrated. The other word that you used?
Resentment, which is a horrible word.
Well, the reality is that's what it eventually becomes. It becomes resentment. You become resentful. You become angry. And it manifests a whole lot of other things because of this position of exchange. So the only person that can do anything about it is you.
Correct. Because
you can feel it and see it. So you need to call it, sit down and address it, and understand that if you don't address it, well, it will address itself. And sometimes it addresses itself in some very painful ways, but it will address itself because it's the principle of life. It's the principle of God, of the universe, to be an exchange. There's an equilibrium, and at some stage it'll pull you back in there. So the quicker you realize it, the quicker you sit down. And I've also learned this, is that when you're feeling you're out of exchange in a certain relationship, like in a business relationship, sometimes you lose that relationship, but another one opens up. When you're so focused on managing this and frustrated and I'm going to make it work, what happens is all your energies and efforts go into this, but you're not actually creating the exchange because you're not calling it, and you don't open up the opportunities that could be coming elsewhere.
100%, Barry. May I just add this as well? In our economic situation in Zimbabwe, it's difficult for South Africans to understand. You will get it because you've been in Zim. So our money has devalued 4 times, Barry, or 400%, right?
Yeah.
So you've got your fair exchange, everybody's happy. Then things change, the economy changes, and now everything starts to devalue. And it goes back to our first webinar when I spoke about the scarcity syndrome. So now everybody's crying, saying, oh, but I can't afford it, I can't afford it. So then you think, oh, shame, poor you. Okay, well, let's carry on. And then the exchange is becoming very uneven.
So what happens in a case like that is sometimes you have to make a call and you go, okay, so maybe I am delivering more value, but I'd rather keep the client. Now, if you keep the client, and how do you extract other ways to extract exchange? Where people really get out of exchange is that what you see that person saying, well, Debbie, it's really tough and I don't have any money, so could I renegotiate? You renegotiate. You're okay with that, and you go, okay, that's cool. The next thing, you go down to the shops and you see that person spending the same amount of money that they would have paid you on buying some exorbitant meal or going out. Boom. What it does, that fuels that level of exchange, because now you're like, okay, there's something that's not in here.
Yes, totally.
So that's how all these things get fueled, and so you have to manage it. It brings in a whole lot of things like understanding your personal value. When people get desperate, that's when they get out of exchange, because they do things that they wouldn't normally do because they become desperate. So the more you are clear on your values, the more you're clear on your deliverables. Sometimes, like in Zim, you've got to work a lot harder to find the people or the clients that will pay you for the value, but they're always there.
Yes.
And when you're very clear on what value you deliver, people, the right people will find you. It's when you have ambiguity in what you think your value is that you start creating an area out of exchange.
Brilliant, Barry. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you.
Cool. That was great. Thank you for contributing tonight. So Roy says cheeky. So Gillis, great. Really looking forward to have you on the Sales and Leadership Mastery Program, or those of you that know it as the Sales Explosion Program. Starts on Friday. So really a number of you on this call are coming to that. So really looking forward to have you there, and we'll talk a little bit more about exchange in that process because sales is a game of exchange. You want to be in the game for long term in sales, you've got to get an exchange, and people deal with people that add consistent value and get an exchange. But just take this to heart, is that exchange, my belief, my opinion is exchange will always right itself over a period of time. It always does. And that equilibrium will come back again. So thank you guys. Thank you for being with us tonight. Those of you that haven't done the Sales and Leadership Mastery Program, it's still not too late. It starts on Friday morning. If you're interested, bomb a note to Marlon on this in your chat. It's a 2-day program. Starts registrations from 8 o'clock. Starts promptly at 9 o'clock on Friday morning at the Wanderers. We'll run until 10:30 at night and go all day Saturday until Saturday evening. It's a highly intensive program. What I can guarantee you is you'll dramatically shift how you think about selling, and you'll dramatically shift how you think about communicating with other people and extracting and delivering value. So any of you that are interested in investing in yourself, just type in the chat box, Marlon interested, and Marlon will get in touch with you. And those of you that are aware, I'm super excited. I actually spoke to him this afternoon just to start confirming a number of things. But in May, from the 23rd to the 30th of May, I'm hosting Robert Kiyosaki here live in South Africa for a 6-day program called Get Real. So it's a very, very unique program. There will be less than 120 people in the room. It's people say to me, maybe I'll get it next time Robert's coming. I don't know if he's coming to do this program again. It's a very specific program that we're doing, unique opportunity, incredible value, 6 days with Robert Kiyosaki in a small room with 120 people. If you're an entrepreneur, if you want to really shift from the left-hand side of the quadrant to the BI side of the quadrant, it's going to be a cracking program that you'll get huge learnings from a guy who I believe to be one of the top teachers, if not the top teacher when it comes to wealth, finance, financial literacy, and entrepreneurship on this planet, and that is Robert Kiyosaki. So it's a program called Get Real. If you're interested in that, just type Get Real into the box. We'll send you more information. It is I can't wait for May. It's going to be a cracking program, and there will also be a couple of other Rich Dad advisors that will be teaching on that program as well. So if you want more information around that, let us know. Otherwise, really looking forward to see you guys on the next webinar or in one of my rooms soon. So thank you, Marlon, for hosting it. Thank you guys for getting on. Great to see such a great room tonight, and look forward to seeing you at the next Entrepreneurial Hangout. Do me a favor, if you guys are interested, if there's any topics that you would like me to teach on when it comes to sales, entrepreneurship, wealth creation, money, bomb Marlon an email, and that'll give us some good idea. It's important. What do you want to learn? So thank you guys. Have an awesome evening, and be blessed. And we'll chat to you guys soon. Thanks, Marlon. Back to you.
Thank you, Barry. Great as always. Everybody, you will be able to get access to this webinar on the website. You can just go to the resources and look down there. There's a webinars tab. You can click on that one. It'll be available. Plus an email will go out just to let you know that it is available. Ralph, I will be in contact with you. Other than that, we will have the next webinar. So you can send an email on that email address that I dropped, marlon@uncoveringgreatness.co.za. And for any questions or topics that you may want to want Barry to talk about or teach on. And yes, we'll see you at the end of this month. So that actual date for the next webinar will be Tuesday, the 30th of April. So we have this every month on the last and the first Tuesday of every month. So thank you very much, everyone. Hope you have a blessed evening, and we'll see you at the end of the month. Cheers.